The most surprising thing here is how confident this lens feels in real use. I kept reaching for it because it made portraits look clean and soft in the background without me fighting the focus. This is the YONGNUO 85mm F1.8S DF DSM prime lens for Sony E-mount. It sits in that classic medium telephoto spot that people lean on for portraits, detail shots, and those moments where you want a little distance from your subject, but still want a natural-looking perspective. If you shoot people, couples, events, or even simple product shots at home, this focal length makes life easy. It is also a strong pick if you are building a lightweight prime kit and want something that feels more intentional than a zoom lens at the same framing. Right away, what I noticed was the build. It has real weight to it, and that matters because it does not feel like a hollow plastic accessory. The barrel feels solid, and in hand it comes across as durable, like it can handle regular use without me babying it. The size is also reasonable. It is not tiny, but it does not feel oversized on a full-frame Sony body either. I carried it around for a full afternoon and never felt like it was dragging my camera down. The focus ring is smooth, and it has that nice damped glide that feels good when you are making small adjustments. There is also an autofocus and manual focus switch on the lens body, and I used it more than I expected. When I am moving fast during a shoot, being able to flip a switch without digging through camera menus is the kind of thing you only appreciate after you have done a few real sessions. There is a custom button on the lens too, and I like that it is there. I set mine up for a function I use constantly, and it genuinely speeds up how I work without adding clutter or complication. The hood is included, and I kept it on for most of my testing. It helps with glare outdoors, and it adds a bit of protection when I am moving through tight spaces. I will say the surface tends to pick up fingerprints more easily than I expected, so I ended up wiping it down more than once. That is a small thing, but it is part of daily use, and you will notice it if you like your gear looking clean on camera. Mounting it to my Sony full-frame body was straightforward, and once it is on, the balance feels right. The lens does not feel front-heavy in a way that makes handheld shooting annoying. Setup was basically just mount it, set my focus settings the way I like, and start shooting. Nothing about it felt fiddly. Autofocus is one of the best parts of using this lens. It is quick and it is quiet, and that quiet part matters a lot if you do any video. I tested it in a calm indoor space and outside with normal street noise, and in both situations the focusing did not draw attention to itself. It locks on confidently for portraits, and it keeps up well when the subject is moving a little, like someone walking toward me or turning their head during a candid moment. It is not perfect in every situation, but for the kind of work an 85mm lens is typically used for, it feels reliable. Image quality is where I spent most of my time, because that is the whole reason to buy a prime like this. At 1.8, it gives you that shallow depth of field look people want from an 85. Backgrounds melt away in a pleasing, smooth blur, and it helps separate a subject even in a busy location. I used it for portraits with trees and cars in the background, and the lens did a good job keeping the subject dominant without the background turning into harsh, nervous shapes. Sharpness in the center of the frame is strong, especially on faces where it counts. Eyes and lashes come through with good detail when focus is nailed. I did notice that the edges can look a bit softer when shooting wide open. It is not the kind of softness that ruins a portrait, because most portrait framing keeps the subject toward the center anyway. If you are the type of shooter who wants corner-to-corner crispness at 1.8 for flat subjects, you will see it. For portrait work, it did not bother me. Stopping down a bit improves the overall frame, and in normal shooting I naturally land there depending on the look I want. I also saw some chromatic aberration in high contrast situations. The easiest way to describe it is that you can get a bit of purple or green fringing around edges when you shoot against strong light, like backlit hair or bright reflections. It is not out of control, but it is there, and I noticed it more when I pushed the lighting. The good news is that it is usually correctable in editing, and I did not find it to be a deal breaker. It is just something I keep in mind when I am shooting wide open in harsh light. Vignetting is present at 1.82. Corners can look darker compared to the center, especially on bright, even backgrounds. Sometimes I actually like that for portraits because it naturally draws attention inward. When I did not want it, stopping down helped a lot, and software correction takes care of the rest if you prefer a cleaner look. For video, the lens is usable and the autofocus is still nicely quiet, but I did notice focus breathing. When you pull focus from near to far, the framing shifts slightly. If you do a lot of dramatic focus pulls, you will see it. For casual video, interviews, and talking headshots where focus changes are minimal, it is not a big issue. I just would not buy it expecting a perfectly cinema-style focus pull look. Manual focus is the one area where I had to adjust my technique. The ring feels smooth, but it can feel a little too free, almost a bit loose, which made tiny precise adjustments harder than I wanted when I was trying to nail focus on small details. If you mostly use autofocus, you probably will not care. If you are a manual focus heavy shooter, it might take some time to get comfortable with the feel. I also want to mention weather resistance in a realistic way. There is a rubber seal at the mount, which I appreciate. It gives me a bit more confidence when I am outside and the weather is unpredictable. Still, I would not treat this as a lens meant for heavy rain or harsh conditions. I used it in light wind and a bit of mist without issues, but I would not push my luck. One of my favorite real scenarios with this lens was a simple portrait session indoors near a window. I shot wide open to keep the background soft and let the light wrap around the face. The lens gave me that flattering compression an 85mm is known for, and it kept the look clean. Outdoors, I used it for candid shots at a small gathering, and the extra reach let me stay back a little and still capture natural expressions. That is where an 85 really shines, and this one delivered a look I enjoyed editing. The custom button ended up being more than a gimmick for me. Once I assigned it to a function that matched my shooting style, it became something I used without thinking. That is the best kind of feature, the one that disappears into your workflow and makes you faster. After using it across portraits, some detail work, and a mix of photo and video, my takeaway is pretty straightforward. This lens makes a lot of sense for someone who wants that classic portrait look on Sony E-mount without carrying something huge. It feels well built, it focuses quickly and quietly, and the image quality is strong where it matters most. You do have to accept a few quirks like some chromatic aberration in tough light, visible vignetting wide open, and focus breathing if you do video focus pulls. Manual focus also has a lighter feel than I prefer for precise work. If you are primarily shooting portraits, events, couples, or everyday people photography, and you want a dependable 85mm prime that is easy to live with, this one is worth considering. If you are extremely picky about wide open corner sharpness, or you are a manual focus purist, you may want to test it and see if the feel matches your expectations. You can find detailed information about the YONGNUO 85mm F1.8S DF DSM prime lens in the comments section. See you in the next video.